Superman the Animated Series gave us many great episodes, and the focus of today's making of video is from the classic episode, Speed Demons. This was the first episode to introduce us to a member of the eventual Justice League show, The Flash. DC Collectibles released a 2-pack of figures of Superman and Lois in 2017, which had my mind racing as to how many characters they would make. Unfortunately, the line came to a dead stop. I then went to work planning which figures I would have liked to have seen in that full Superman line. The Flash was a natural choice because I loved that episode when I was younger and I really liked his design in this show. DC eventually announced that a full wave of the core League members would be coming the following year, and Flash was of course included, so I could probably cancel my plans, right? Not so fast. There are a few differences between the two designs, as you can see here. Outside of overall character body style, the main differences are in his cowl, chest emblem, and belt. The original from Speed Demons has a larger emblem with the lightning bolt encircled by a black frame, while the Justice League design has a bolt framed in yellow. His earpieces are much more exaggerated in Justice League, and his belt has a much sharper contrast in shape. The lightning wraps on his forearms are more simplified in his later design, but nothing as drastic as the belt. These changes were enough to keep my plans in place and would allow me to recreate the classic racing duo on my shelf. Stick around to the end to see the two of them together. But for now, let's get started. The first thing I like to do in my process is compare model sheets and reference images to the already sculpted figures in the DC lines. This way I can see if I'll have any parts to reuse to keep continuity and a visual style throughout the line. If you don't have all of the animated figures that DC Collectibles made, let me invite you to a fantastic site, the DC Collectibles Hunter. Here you will find a comprehensive listing of the figures, complete with high-resolution images for each. For the Flash, I immediately saw the similarities in his cowl to the mask on the Gods and Monsters Batman figure. From there, you can see that his torso and arms match up pretty well too. But when you get down to his legs, not so much. Flash has nearly knee-high boots, so the tights won't really work. Wait, have you seen these boots before? Well yeah, the Gods and Monsters Superman will do quite nicely. I started out photoshopping my ideas together, but that proved ineffective because the scales didn't always match up when I got them in hand, which resulted in changing the recipes often. Luckily, these two will be perfect together. With our parts selected, it's now time to separate them. I've used a few different methods for heating up figures, but my favorite for the summer has been the simple heat gun from Amazon. In the colder months, I like to use a space heater and set the figures in front of it for a few minutes, and it doubles to heat up the room nicely. I think you'll be surprised how quickly this heat gun actually works. You can't tell with this time lapse, but I only put it on for about 30 seconds or less. Any more and the rubber actually starts melting. You can even see the little lip on Superman's coat where the heat started to misshape it. Take off any extra rubber belts or coats and you'll be ready for the next step. Now we have the top half of Superman left over and the bottom half of Batman. Surely we can make someone from these parts later. Now it's time to Dremel. I used a simple Dremel set from Walmart and I've been using the same one for a good 6 or 7 years. The dremeling and sanding portions can seem to take the longest, and sometimes they do, but they're very crucial to getting a clean end product. Dremel off any rubber parts from the coat and most of the details from the head and then the belt. It may take a little bit to get used to the right amount of pressure to use because it's actually pretty easy to mess it up at first. Keep it on the low speed for smaller details and then the higher speed for the thicker parts. You can see me switching back and forth between the two. Then you have many passes for sanding. My sandpaper of choice is a super fine 400 grit, and I like to cut them into small squares to ensure I get the most out of each piece. Do you see how I'm checking how smooth it is between sandings? There isn't much of a technique here, just kind of keep at it until it's completely flat. As I mentioned, sanding can seem to take the longest because when you think you're done, you're not. Then you try again, and you're not. Then you have to do it again, and you might be done then. Once all the dust settles, you get the figure cleaned off, then you're ready for sculpting. My favorite sculpting compound is Epoxy Sculpt. It's a 2-part mix that air cures within 24 hours, and you have a good hour before it starts getting a little harder to work with. You just need to grab 2 equal parts, mix them together until they're a consistent color, and then you can start sculpting. You can see the way I'm mixing is I like to take the 2 parts and then just braid them together, and then you can mix them pretty equally that way. I took a little while to learn that you can usually get away with less compound than you expect, and it's best to throw some on and cut away what you don't want to make the shape that you're after. Take great care to observe all the little details and reproduce them just right. For Flash's forearms and belt, you squish some on like a bracelet, wrapping all the way around, and then cut your lightning shapes out one diagonal at a time. Another tip is that it's best to have a scrap kind of item that if you mix up too much epoxy, then you can just throw it onto that and then you can build it up. Like for example, mine is, I'm eventually going to make a Doomsday, and he's kind of in the background. Like if I mix up too much epoxy for one character and then I have some left and I don't want to waste it, then I'll just throw it on Doomsday, just slowly building him up over time. For his head, we need to fill in around the eyes to get the correct shape. I started at the bottom and then smoothed a piece over onto the top. But you can see here, this will happen a lot too, that sometimes you'll have a mistake, but you just kind of have to, like I did, just put it right back on and then keep going, and you'll smooth it out and it'll work out just fine. I don't have video or pictures of the earpieces I made, but I chose to use green stuff because it has the ability to be more pliable, and I figured that would be best to prevent any breakage since they look so fragile. And honestly, if you couldn't already tell, this video is kind of put together by recreating parts of my custom, so I don't have, process pictures or video of everything. For his chest emblem, I wanted to keep the stylistic choice DC made of sculpting on the symbols instead of just painting. Ball up some epoxy, press it down into a circle, and then add your lightning bolt. Once you've sculpted everything you need and sanded the transitions down smooth, it's time to prime, and then it's my favorite part, painting. You really only need a couple coats of primer. I use either black, white, or gray, depending on the need. But for Flash, I went with this white to make it easier on the symbol and eyes later. Flash only needs a few simple colors: white, peach, yellow, red, and a black. You can either buy paints or mix them to get your colors matched. But make sure you mix enough for many thin coats, because that's the key with painting. You want to lay down layers of paint that build up so that you avoid having brush strokes. Once you finish painting, you'll need to seal them up with a spray, and then you can add them to your shelf. At last, as promised, here are Superman and the completed Flash racing together side by side. I'm really happy with the end result, and he's still one of my favorite customs, which is why I put the spotlight on him for my first video. That's all for today. Join me next time for a look at the making of another custom DCAU figure. Go ahead and leave any questions or requests for future characters in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and feel free to like and subscribe to get notified for my next video. Have a good one, and happy customizing.